we have the enigmatic and wonderful Jillian Haslam. I hope you're here, Jillian. Jillian has written A Voice Out of Poverty. Tell me when it was that we did our first interview together, Jillian. Was it 10 years ago?
Yes, Ronnie. Indeed. It was May 2013, almost.
Wow, nearly 10 years ago.
Nearly, yeah.
And you have written A Voice Out of Poverty. The subline is A Woman's Ascent from Destitution to International Success, which is now in its, you wrote it a while ago. Would you like to explain the genesis?
Of course. You interviewed me when I wrote the first edition, was called Indian English. And now I've rewritten it. And obviously it's titled A Voice Out of Poverty, with a lot more detail and focusing on poverty alone.
And I mean, you've won so many prizes, and you've had so much acclaim around the world for this. And of course, you're now an international motivational speaker, business coach, educator, philanthropist, and most of all, survivor. You've won the prestigious Mother Teresa International Memorial Award, and you've sort of embraced becoming an important driver of global action for the most urgent needs of the underserved in India and the UK, especially during the pandemic. You've got 6 non-profit organizations across India, and you oversee the creation of school programs and training programs to help empower women, youth, and the elderly. And you live in London now. But you're in constant demand, aren't you? So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, Ronnie, there is a great saying. Aristotle actually said it, give me a child until he is 7 and I will give you a man. And we are all, carved out of our pasts, our backgrounds, and so much of what has happened to me, or so much of what I have experienced as a child, has a lot to do with the why I wrote this book. But while our backgrounds and our circumstances, definitely influence what we do and who we are, I believe that we are truly responsible for who we become and what we do about it. And that is why I wrote the book.
What core message do you want readers to take away?
I would love readers to look at the world around us, just look at what has happened, for example, in Sri Lanka, and understand what is poverty, understand what poverty is doing to people across the world. And if we can just understand that in India alone, 60% of the population live on less than $5.50 a day. That is like £4.50 a day. In the US, 1% of the population live on that. And in the UK, 1% of the population live on that. But look at countries like the Congo, Somalia, so many other countries, Sudan. 97% of the population live on that. I mean, how is it possible for people to survive, Ronnie, if something is not radically done about this situation? And I wrote my story because I wanted people to understand what a family lives with and goes through when they are faced with such extreme poverty. I have little girls at my center who are suffering with cancer, but they work in 3 and 4 people's houses just to survive. I have little girls who work in shops where they are beaten just to survive. Do the world understand that only 1% of the people in the world who are faced with adversity make it through? Do we understand these statistics, and how can we all come together to do something about it?
It's really sobering when you put the figures like that, Jillian. We've spoken about the poverty. Let's go back to your own self as a child, because that's what really broke my heart when you talked about living under the stairs. You were tiny. You suffered from malnutrition. Can you take me back to that time, please?
Rani, it was, to explain that time, honestly speaking, it was as though death took one of us and left one of us and took one of us and left one of us. My parents lost 4 children before the ages of 6 months to abject poverty, malnutrition, and disease. And this is what is happening to families all over the world. My little sister, myself, we were reduced to living under a flight of stairs. Hollywood directors have gone and seen the place and have been shocked and cried like little children because they could not ever understand how bad it was for us and how terrible. After that, we moved to a slum where more than 3,000 people shared 3 toilets. We had hardly any electricity. We filled water from a tube well. We had catastrophic accidents, one after the other. My little sister almost fell down a manhole. My other little sister got burned from her neck right down to her thighs. And when she was bleeding, you could almost see her ribs. The book basically details everything. But I just want to emphasize the fact that it is not just about my story. I'm just telling my story because I do believe that when you tell your story, it can heal others. Also, it can make others listen, and it can serve as a beacon of hope for those who are in extremely desperate need.
You used to queue for hours at a tea shop. Why was that?
Yes, we were living in a place called Kidabo in the slum, and my mother had to go out in search of food, money, whatever she could find. My dad used to leave for work very early in the morning because he had to travel very far, for a job as a stenographer. And my little sister Vanessa and myself were left to look after the 2 little ones, our 2 little siblings. And so we used to have to go to the local tea shop, go to the local vendors, and it was the poorest of the poor that helped to save our lives. We used to have to queue up there. We used to have to ask them for whatever food they had, the stale samosas, jalebis, whatever it is they would give us. And they used to ask us, okay, empty the ash from our ovens, go and empty it into the dustbin. And my sister and myself used to do dozens of trips up and down with our little bowls or little plates. And we used to empty the ash from their ovens and come all the way back. And then they used to give us this little food that we used to take home. It was great fun also because we used to be covered in ash, and we used to go home and the little ones used to laugh at us because we used to look like ghosts. But nevertheless, we had food in our hands to give them. And when it was a Friday, Mother Teresa had her Sisters of the Poor in a presbytery nearby, like a church. And we used to have to queue up for hours and hours on end just to get a bag of powdered milk, a packet of biscuits, and possibly a bag of food and clothes. And it was all the clothes that were sent by people from Western countries. And sometimes the knickers were so large, running, it used to start at our chests and end at our ankles. But we never had knickers. We used to wear those knickers and parade around the whole area. When I see little kids today with no clothes on, wearing nothing, no food, just hundreds of them, it reminds me of myself. And that is one of the first times when I met Mother Teresa. And she didn't have the time, really. She just petted us all on the cheeks and said, next, next, next. But we never ever missed those queues because it was all that we, could get possibly in a week. That was food for us.
How did you find the strength to keep going and believe that life could be different when you were that age, Jillian?
I think I knew that I had to fight for my siblings, and I knew I had to come back and fight to take others with me. And that is why, Rani, my book says, and my book emphasizes the fact that success is not just about making it through yourself, but rather it is the act of reaching back and taking or bringing others with you. Because if we don't understand this, very soon we are going to face revolution after revolution, and people are going to stand up against this inequality in the world of what is happening, where the rich are just getting richer, corruption is getting worse, and the poor are just getting poorer. People, little babies are thrown on bins in the mornings. Mother Teresa used to save these little ones. But this is what I have grown up with, Rani, and I want somebody to act. And I cannot thank you enough for having me on your show.
You're very popular with interviewers, Jillian. This isn't the first one you've done. You're in demand around the world for motivational speaking. And I must ask you, you know, we know each other rather well. As you're repeating these descriptions to me from your heart of what it was like, I can feel the emotion in your voice. How do you feel as you tell me what it was like? Because you must be taken back to that, to those times queuing by the tea shop, going to see Mother Teresa, being in the slums and the byways and alleyways of poor Calcutta.
It's incredibly hard, Rani.
I'm sorry.
But no, it's okay. But I have got to find the strength to fight. And like I always say, you know, whenever I speak even to kids in this country, you know, I received an award for speaking at the maximum number of schools. I try to tell the kids that, listen, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's tough. But we have all got to remember that there is somebody worse off than us. And I've got to find the strength to fight through. It wasn't easy finding my voice. I had to train for over 10 years to get my DTM. To train as a professional, a DTM is Distinguished Toastmaster. It gives you the highest possible degree as public speaker.
Yes.
And Toastmasters has done the world for me. They have helped me, and even now, you know, the international president is supporting me, and I'm very, very grateful to so many in that organization. But I've had to fight through because, as a child, poverty destroys your soul in a way. It scars you. I was locked in a toilet full of hundreds of flying cockroaches when I was a little girl. And that in itself, apart from the poverty, just made me so fearful that I fell down up to the age of 14. My sisters still this day call me a wimp. They cannot believe that I found the strength to fight through what I have been through. But I think, as Obama says, President Obama had once said that it's only when you attach your purpose to something much bigger than yourself that that is when the magic will begin. And I truly believe that. And I decided to attach what I felt to this cause of fighting for these people who don't have a voice, who are not heard and who are suffering. And I think that's what propelled me to become who I am today.
I'm really sorry. I don't want to upset you, but it is important to go through the story and find out. But if it becomes too much for you, please tell me, and I'll go to a track if you need to take a break.
It's perfectly okay. Thank you.
So, but can I unpick even further, please, Jillian? You were born to British parents in India, and so they faced discrimination, and I suppose you did, from both the Indian population and the British for not being Indian, but also for not being British. So can you explain, I mean, I want to ask you, what do you think you are now? But could you explain how that happens? Because are you classified as an Anglo-Indian?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Ronnie, I am both British because of my parents being British on both sides, but I am Indian. And I have said this very many times before. I am also Indian, so I'm both British and Indian in different ways. But if I were to describe myself and to summarize this, I am Anglo-Indian, and that is who I am, and that is what I am known as best. But coming down to your questions, yes, I have faced a lot of abuse from various people, but it's not, out of any malice. It's just out of pure ignorance, where, sometimes you get very many Indian people abusing you and saying, you're not Indian, both sides are British. Why are you, why are you saying that you're Indian because you're not? And equally, I've had my own community abuse me saying, you're not you're not British, you're Indian because you're born in India. So I think in these kind of situations, one just cannot win. You will face abuse, but I do love what Wayne Dyer, and thankfully I'm very well read. I love all of these books and I've read, over the years. And I do love what Wayne Dyer said when he said, change the way you look at things and the things you look at will change. And when I look at these things, I see people, I see that religion divides and spirituality unites us all. And that is where we have to be. We have to keep focused on what we are fighting for and not allow all of this abuse to get in the way. So when we were living in the slum, Rani, we had water balloons at the time of Holi thrown at our chests from high-rise buildings, thrown at the back of our ears, thrown at our heads. And it was excruciating when it came to pain, when it came to that kind of behavior. During Diwali, we had chocolate bombs thrown in front of our house. And I remember holding my little sister in my arms and holding her ears. And she was only a few weeks old. And it was so hard for us, but the bombs fell continuously, and this happened weeks before the festival, weeks after the festival. The bombs were thrown in the rickshaws, the bombs were thrown at us. We were terrified, we were traumatized. But whenever we used to talk to my parents, my dad always used to say, no, you must not blame them. You must feel pity on them. They're just working out of ignorance. But if you go to a proper school and a proper place, you will find that these children are educated and they know better. So pray for them. Don't hate them. But that is how we grew up. So no, I don't hate anyone. I choose to take the positives out of every situation and not the negatives.
That's very, very vivid as you describe it. I didn't even know before you brought this to my attention just under 10 years ago that the Anglo-Indian community was discriminated against from all sides. So because I was familiar with the term Anglo-Indian, and I just found that they were sort of good-looking people who fair-skinned, not that dark-skinned isn't good-looking too, but just, fair-skinned people with sort of browner hair than generally Indians do have. So the Anglo-Indian community, does it consist of the British people who were left behind after independence?
Ronnie, people have various opinions on that. Some believe it's a mixture of British and Indian and, so on and so forth. But actually, yes, it is. Obviously, some of us have British parents on both sides, parentage, and some of us have British parentage on one side. But yes, we are Anglo-Indians and we do look very different. And that's what will happen anywhere. So if you really look at discrimination, people who are fat are discriminated upon, people who are thin are discriminated, people who are different race, color, culture. And when you do look different, you are discriminated upon. But my father and my mother always taught us to look at these things very differently. So that's how we saw things, Rani.
So, and now you say how would you describe your identity?
I would describe my identity as, like I said, as an Anglo-Indian girl. And to be honest, I always tell people, let's not look at caste and culture and creed and color and all of that. We are all inhabitants of this planet when we all have got to fight for people. In my centers in India, I have a lot of Muslim girls. I have a lot of Christian girls. I have a lot of Hindu girls. In Britain, I talk to a lot of schools with, how many different cultures and, castes and creeds we have and communities over here. I never look at people like that, Ronnie. I've always my parents have always brought us up to look at a human being and a girl who's exactly like us. Sometimes when I go to India, they gather schools, 6 schools, 8 schools, 10 schools at a time and fill the parks. And then I talk to these little ones and I say to them, look, I'm just like you. I have every part of my body and my hair and everything is just like you. I can take you by your hand right now and I can take you to the tube well where I filled water. I can take you to the manhole where my sister fell in. I can show you my little veranda where I cooked. I can take you to my little room. So I lived just like you. But what I want you to understand, and the sole message of my book also, is for you. It's to understand that it's not what happens to you. It is what you do about it. This is the message I try to give every little young girl and every little boy suffering in some way or the other.
And there are more and more children who it's coming to light, you know, who've all grown up with issues of one sort or another, because when you give birth to a child, it doesn't come with a manual, and you know, we don't know how to raise our children, and if we're vulnerable in any way, we often don't get the support that we need, and that can lead to problems. But what I just want to also ask you, you know, you've been through extreme trauma and suffering from poverty, malnutrition, discrimination, hatred from various sectors of the community. And as an innocent child of hardly a few years old, those scars, how much of them remain? I mean, I caused you to become emotional as you were replying to me, and I could feel your tears. Did you have any have you taken psychological support? Have you needed to do that?
No, and I don't need it, Ronnie. I think the psychological support comes from myself and my strength. And if anyone has given us the psychological support, or given me the psychological support, it's my parents, who were both extremely inspirational and charitable. They made us who, you know, turned us into who we are today. My family have been the greatest support in all of this, because all of my sisters help different people and different organizations in different way, and they all do great things. But I think I want to mention that the people really who saved our life and who taught us the greatest lessons of all are the poorest of the poor. So, for example, our little Modi, who we call here a grocery store, gave us rice, dal, atta, sugar every single day of our lives. And he never ever took any money, because he knew my parents were not home. And he just gave us every day in little pieces of paper wrapped up. And I told you about the tea shop guy who gave us, you know, those samosas and jalebis every day. There was a meat man down the road who gave us dry bones that nobody would buy. We used to go to his shop and he used to keep it for us, and sometimes actually wait for us. We used to bring it home and make soup because it's so nutritious. There was a vegetable woman who used to save all the bad potatoes and tomatoes for us. We used to cut off all the bad parts and cook it. It was the poorest of the poor in that area that helped to save our lives. And I just wish that some of them were around when we lost our earlier 4 siblings. But, you know, 2 of them, we were so poor at that time, Ronnie, that 2 of them, twins, a girl and a boy, Kimberly and Alan, were buried in tea chests, because my parents couldn't even afford coffins, you know.
I'm wincing as you speak. I'm wincing because we've all suffered to some degree. You can't get through life often without having had some challenges. But I cannot imagine, and you paint such a vivid picture in A Voice Out of Poverty, and I do urge people to buy it and to come and hear you speak and find your videos, etc. When will it actually go on sale?
It is being released in America on the 13th of September. Mm-hmm. And I travel across America and to Canada to promote the book and the story. It will be released. We will launch it in the UK on the 11th of November, 10th or 11th. And in India, it is. We are launching it on the 2nd or 3rd of February for the whole month across the country. And then in Australia, it will be released in April. So I am traveling on a very extensive tour to try to talk about poverty and to try and get people to please remember to do something about it.
Well, I'm very privileged that you're talking to me. You're listening to River Radio on the web, on the mobile, on Alexa. We have had a stunning lineup today. We started off with Linda Duberly and Lars Swan talking about politics, what's happening at Westminster, what's likely to be happening. We also had a look at Japan. Then we had Dr. Narinjan Subramaniam from Henley Business School and Brennan Narinjan, who's an undergraduate in economics from Cambridge, talking about economics, what's going to happen, what impact a change of leadership will have or will not have. We talked a bit about Sri Lanka as well and where that is now in the wake of the revolution. And then we spoke to Daniel Pearson, writer of Camp Albion, writer in residence over at the Watermill Theatre in Newbury. And now it's my privilege to be speaking to my friend and talented author, talented speaker, a woman who has led a life, a lady who's led a life that very few of us have the experience of. A Voice Out of Poverty is her book, which is going to be launched internationally, and it's River Radio's great privilege, Jillian, that you've come and talked to us this far ahead of your tour, and I hope you will come back as well. So we were talking about growing up in poverty and the scars it leaves. Are your parents still alive?
Unfortunately not, Ronnie, no.
So when did you lose them?
Well, my mother, actually, I lost her at a very early age, at the age of 53 in 1997, and my father expired in 2002. But my father actually lived till the age of 80, but my mother lost her life because she actually sacrificed everything she stood for as a woman, as a mother, as everything to save all our lives. And I have written the most incredible blog about her, which can be found on Facebook or any of my social media channels, about the 5 lessons that a mother can teach you. And I remember the time, Ronnie, when we were living under the steps and my sister was lying down one side of her and I was lying on the other side of her. And she just used to tell us stories. And she hadn't eaten anything. She would come back with a little, tiffin carrier of 2 pieces of meat with a little gravy and 1 naan roti. And she would tell us to eat it up. And we would say, Mom, what about you? And she used to say, oh my God, my friends have fed me so much that I'm bursting with food and I can't eat. But actually, she hadn't eaten anything for days. And she was working with these ladies who were very cruel to her. But we were like piranhas because we were so little. We used to just polish off that 1 naan roti and little curry. But she sacrificed so much throughout her life. And she brought every single morsel home to us. She even brought men off the streets who we didn't know and brought them into our little room, which was 8 by 10 feet, and said, he's going to stay with us, or she's going to stay with us. And we used to say, Mom, he's a man. We are all sleeping on the floor, side by side, like a railway station. You can't just bring a man. And she used to say, what 5 can eat, 6 can eat, what 4 can eat, 5 can eat. And when we used to say to my dad, but Dad, she can't do this, my dad used to say, children should be seen and not heard. Your mother's word is final. We will help anyone in need. So that's how we were brought up, Ronnie.
Wow. I'm moved to tears as you speak, Jillian. I want you to tell me those 5 lessons you referred to that your mother taught you.
Well, the first lesson, she was a highly, highly charitable person. And the first lesson she taught us was to give back, always to help others. Like I've just told you, she would just take anyone off the street and get us to help them. She also taught us that, for example, when we used to get these dry bones from the shop, she used to boil these bones and bring the soup to our school because there were very, very many poor children in our school who just, during sports time, who just didn't have any nourishment, nothing. And so she used to bring bottles of soup to the school and give it to many of the kids over there, and they still remember her to that day for it. She also used to she used to get my little sister and me to run around in the slum to all the tailor shops and pick up all these rags that the tailors, the cut pieces that they didn't need. We used to bring it home, and she used to stitch these beautiful duvet covers, pillowcases, curtains. And from rags, she used to make things that were so beautiful for us. And she always taught us that even with nothing, you can turn even nothing into something, because this is your start. It's not your end. Your end is up to you. So she used to tell us the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. My dad used to play the song of Dolly Parton and, her coat of many colors.
Yes.
And that's really how we grew up, Rani. All of the lessons are in the book.
Wow. And I must ask at the moment, just at this moment, how can people get hold of you? I'm a bit lost for words at the moment. I'm sort of feeling what you're saying quite powerfully. But how can people get hold of you? Where should they go to, and how can they find out more? Where can they find you? What are your social media handles?
Ronnie, I'm on all social media platforms. My website is my name, JillianHaslam.com. But of course,
That's
on my
Jillian
website,
Jillian with a J.
Jillian with a J, Jillian Haslam, HASLAM.com. And of course, they can contact my publicist, Wildbound, who are in America, and they can pre-order the book on Amazon. It's available everywhere.
And your publicist's details are on the website, are they?
The publicist details, they are Wildbound publicists. They are based in America. And of course, their details are on the website and can be found on the media kit on my website, yes.
So going back to this whole issue of poverty, we live in a democratic society here, and India is supposed to be a democracy. So what's the answer to the philosophical question, how poverty can shape possibility?
Well, Ronnie, like I said earlier, poverty, so many people around the world are suffering, and there are just not enough possibilities to help people in poverty. Like I said, 1% of us fight through adversity, but we have got to find a way for people to understand that if they don't act, and they don't see success. I know we all talk about, I have a 23-year career in banking, but if we keep talking about success and leadership and how do we get richer and how do we get bigger and how do we get more powerful, we are going to face one revolution after the other, because we have got to understand that success is just not about making it through yourself. You have got to reach back and help people and take them with you. And that's the message that I want to leave people with.
And just talking quickly about your own career, because we've only got about less than 10 minutes left. I want to know how you did pull yourself up, and what it was like growing up as a woman in India, and how you turned that into a career from a poor start, from a very impoverished start.
Sure. Rani, it was, to say it was hard is an understatement. Like I told you about the chocolate bombs and the balloons, and obviously I was a child that suffered terribly with a nervous disposition. I definitely growing up and seeing so many, siblings die, to live in those excruciating circumstances was definitely hard. But we also have to remember that India is a country made up of circa 18% of the world's population, and that is a huge number. But, like any large group, there are multiple behaviors and attitudes. And unfortunately, many people grow up, uneducated, ignorant, and have very poor role models. And pardon me for saying so, but the film industry and now the internet, that is really adding to this problem. So if you are exposed to those parts of the population, which is, for example, in the slums, etc., that we lived, you are going to face this kind of problems. And these problems are faced in any impoverished area around the world. But I think education is key to helping and aiding poverty. But we mustn't also try to discriminate. So, for example, we have to understand that sometimes when I talk to people in India, they say, oh no, Jillian, you can't mix the rich children with the poor children because the rich children won't come. And I say, but I went to a school where our principal, Mr. David Cameron, and all of our teachers and matrons, etc., encouraged children to be together, to study together, to be one. But I'm now often told, no, you can't mix the rich children with the poor children because then the rich people will not send their children to the school. Rani, I'll give you, I was invited to speak at Cambridge, and I was astonished when I was speaking to so many students there. I was astonished when one of the students turned around and told me that I was doing a thesis on poverty, Jillian, and that's why, we invited you here today to speak to us. But we went to India and we interviewed a lot of these industrialists on how they made their fortunes, how they became rich, and, talk about their stories. And a few of them actually turned around and said to them that we will tell you our stories, we will tell you everything. But one thing we ask is, please do not associate us with poverty. Excuse me. If that is going to be people's attitude, how do we ever help? How do we ever change things?
What did they mean when they say? What did they mean when they said don't associate us with poverty? Is that because they were born into rich families, or what were they what were they meaning?
The way the student described it to me, and she had tears in her eyes, she said that they didn't want, maybe, I don't know, I took it like they didn't want to go back to that place, but trust me, Rani, I don't think that was the way, the reason. I think they just didn't want their businesses or their names associated with poverty, and that's how I take it. But we've got to change this mindset,
For sure. It's really worrying when you so you're telling me that sort of, for instance, a large industrialist might say that however many billions of dollars my company's worth, I don't want you to talk about poor people to me. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you've gone the other way, that however successful you've become, you founded something called the Remedia Trust. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, sure. Ronnie, Remedia Trust is based on, Remedia Trust is actually based on a documentary evidence that we use, which is education, empowerment, and employability. And it is to educate girls, educate young women, even from the ages of 12 and 10, right up to 60-year-olds and 50-year-olds or whatever. And we take them through this whole session of educating them, empowering them, inspiring them, motivating them, and of course, giving them the skills that they need to get into the outside world. So my job at Remedia Trust is we help men, women, and children, but we actually give women mostly the skills and inspiration, motivation, love, confidence, and everything that they need to get into the outside world and to fight poverty. And we, of course, always also tell them stories about, Dhirubhai and Ambani, who basically, rode a bicycle every day and sold petrol to people. We tell them the stories about Elon Musk and, how he had to eat hot dogs for so long. And we give them all of these inspiration stories. And that's one of the reasons why I've written my book too. And we've had a lot of parents, it's even on my website, who have written to the Telegraph, where I won the True Legend Award. And I've said to them, it should...
Telegraph in India, right? Or is that the Daily Telegraph? Yeah.
Yes, it's the Telegraph in India. And they have written to them saying that actually Jillian's books should form part of the curriculum in every single school. This is very important. And that is why I go out to schools, even to colleges, and I say that I'm going to teach, or I'm going to share lessons with your students that no business school can teach you.
I do think so. I agree with you. I think your book should be on the curriculum, and I think that you're speaking widely and you're available around the world. You are very much in demand, but I think your work should be part of the curriculum around the world to teach us so much about what it's like to grow up as you did. So, and going forward, Jillian, what are your goals?
My goals, Rani, it's to make a difference to the world we live in. And as I said, to speak up for women who live in poverty, who have ambitions, who have talents, who have voices, but who lack possibility, who lack opportunity. A, to get the world to try and do more and to help them. And B, to give them the strength, as my parents gave me, to fight poverty and to fight adversity, and to understand that ultimately, to face it, that not many people are going to come out to help you, but it's not what happens to you, it's really what you do about it.
So in terms of the question that I had for you, which I told everybody about before you came on in the preview to the show, I said, how can somebody who starts from grinding poverty grow up to be super successful and then go on to look after children and poor people around the world, but particularly in India, and to motivate others? How can that be done? What's the answer to that, Jillian?
Rani, I think if you, as I said, I think our backgrounds and our pasts, carve out who we are. But I think if you have a purpose and you really want to fight for it, of course, we will all face fear and we will all have confidence issues, poverty, hardship. Millions of children all over the world face this in schools and colleges, even in poverty situations. But I think if you have a purpose, fight for it. Don't let fear get in the way. Understand that this is your start and not your end. If you have a cause, fight for it, keep at it, and you will definitely be able to find a solution. And I sincerely thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Jillian Haslam, thank you very much for talking to me. You must come on again, and all the best to you. Thank you for coming on. Next week we have on The Missing Question, Donna Schoenherr will be doing news and topical events, and we will have a great new lineup for you. It's we'll be having the second hour all about how ballet and dance helps us in the community.